You know, with 2020 finally being behind us, I think it's important to take a step back and appreciate the very best that came from the year in order to start the new year strong. Unfortunately for all of us, there isn't a whole lot to be loved about 2020, but that isn't going to stop me from making the top 10 anime of 2020. Originality be damned. But in order to make it just a little bit more interesting, this list will not include any sequels or shows that did not end within 2020. If it did, then just know that Haiku to the Top, Kaguya Love is War, and ReZero would be in the top 3. I know that would be on every list, so that's why I did that restriction, and I really had to dig up all the relevant shows from the last year to give you all a nice spread. So sit back, relax, don't forget to like and subscribe, and witness the top 10 anime from 2020. Number 10. Coming in the 10 slot, we have one of the most thrilling shows from the fall season, and that's Akudama Drive. Following the adventures of Swindler, a normal girl that gets roped into a gang of superpowered psychos whose mission it is to successfully accomplish a series of heists given by a robotic cat. Taking place in a cyberpunk dystopian world where Japan is split between the affluent Kanto and the more rugged Kansai regions, this is an anime that is filled with criminal plots, morally corrupt police, and insanely beautiful visuals. The only things holding this show back is overall slightly rushed pacing, a confusing and preachy plot midway, and a definite lack in focus for overall story it wants to tell. In all other categories though, from characters to animation to music, this is an entertaining watch that will pump you full of adrenaline. Number 9. A bit of a dark horse candidate for the best show of the year, we have Decadence. Similarly taking place in a dystopian future, the remains of humanity are holed up in a mecha fortress called Decadence. Here, the gears defend the last of humanity against colossal monsters. Unfortunately for those few humans that still remain on Earth, the reasons for the current state of the world is because of an evil corporation that has turned Earth into little more than a setting for a popular virtual reality game. Kaburagi, the cyborg player, joins forces with the human girl Natsume in order to save humanity and stop the game for good. Decadence is a surprisingly great show, borrowing from some of the best elements from shows like Attack on Titan and Darling in the Franxx, along with the interesting artistic split perspectives between the cyborgs and the humans. It comes in as one of the more unique shows of the summer season. With a killer soundtrack, gripping characters, and an ever-evolving story, this is something that deserves to be on your watch list. Though keep your expectations for the visuals a tad low, as this show employs some frame rate dropping, terrible CGI with its monster battles. The story can get a bit convoluted and there's not many interesting side characters, but the overall experience is a joyful one. Number 8. Coming from the fall, we have a wholesome entry with Tonakawa Over the Moon for you, though it starts off a bit over the top with our main character Nasa, yes that's his name, hit by the horny police while trying to approach a beautiful girl. Fortunately for him, one bonk isn't enough, so still bloody and broken he asks out said girl. Just before he passes out, he says that she'll go out with him, only if he agrees to marry her. Of course he does, passes out, and 2 years later she appears at his doorstep ready to go through with their promise. But the majority of the show revolves around the cute slice of life comedy that comes with essentially two strangers gradually learning what it's like to be a couple, and then to a larger extent the process of transitioning from living alone to one with your wife. If you're looking for a cute, wholesome show with dumb newlyweds, as oddly specific as that request is, this is the show for you. It could do with a little better animation and better music that isn't the OP because that's a pop, but the story and characters make up for it. Let yourself experience for a slight minute what it might be like to marry your waifu before we get into the next entry. Number 7. Making itself known, coming in number 7, we have Kagushi Godot, following the daily life of a manga artist trying to prevent his daughter from learning of his occupation to the point of pretending to work as a salaryman. This is in addition to the fact that the majority of the series plays off a sort of flashback as with each episode we see a grown-up Hime reminiscing in a ruined version of her home. There is mystery, there is heart, but more importantly, there is wholesome comedy. Watch as a single dad tries his best to balance a home life, his work as a manga artist, and hiding the shame of his work from his daughter. Mix in the excellent characters and you got yourself another banger of a show. It'll make you laugh, it'll make you cry, and it's something that shouldn't be ignored from the spring season. Literally the only thing that could be seen as a negative is its somewhat lacking soundtrack and good but not game-breaking visuals. Give this show a shot. Number 6. Taking place in another dimension called Hole, Doridoro follows Cayman, a man with a cayman for a head, as he searches through this grungy, dark world for the magician that made him like this. But there is so much more to take in than this overarching story. Doridoro is a show filled with style, edge, gore, and excellent storytelling. The dark world that it builds up is exemplified in just the first episode. In order to find out who might have turned him into a lizard man, Cayman has to nearly eat the head of a suspect until a shadow demon judges them. Additionally, the magic system is completely unique, as magic takes the form of black smoke cast from the fingertips of the magicians. Meaning, in a battle against a magic caster and a non-magic caster, the best thing to do is to cut off the fingers of your opponent, which this show likes to display in all its glory detail. But edge and gore isn't the only thing in Doridoro, as you also get an excellent spread of characters that all have interlocking pasts and intersecting motivations, leading to some intense scenes. On top of all of that, this show has a godly soundtrack, perhaps the best of the year. What might turn you off from this show is its experimental animation style, where the majority of the characters are animated in 3D with the setting and certain crossover visuals being in 2D. However, the overall style of the animation combined with the source material creates something that you get used to very fast. If you enjoy dark but goofy characters, then this is a show that you need to watch. Number 5. Okay, this might just be my personal bias, but I think it would be a crime not to put Somali and the Forest Spirit somewhere on this list. This is a show that completely captured my heart and opened my eyes to the heavily fantasy travel genre of shows. Following a human child Somali and her guardian golem, they travel a fantastic fantasy world with the goal of finding other humans for Somali to grow up with. This show has everything from a stunningly beautiful world to heavily human characters and a touching story. This is something that needs to be put in everyone's face. What makes this show so good is the unique characters and their problems and how they react to the innocence of Somali and her protector. Additionally, there is the looming crisis of the limited life of Golem as he quests to return Somali to a human settlement before his life ends. A tremendously heartfelt, beautiful, and tearful story that deserves a slot in some of the best shows of the year, and in a year that was both equally terrible with the outside world and the release of anime. This is something that is much needed contrast in all of our lives now. Number 4. Coming in at number 4, we have Moriarty the Patriot, revolving around the backstory of famous Sherlock Holmes antagonist William James Moriarty, as well as his brothers Louise and Albert. Together they rhyme a crime consulting firm that mainly seeks to empower those underprivileged in society by helping them take revenge on particularly nasty noblemen. With hate towards the upper class, the excitement of the show lies for the process that the brothers execute their client's revenge. Some have a mystery of figuring out who exactly is behind the problem, others are more about coming up with the perfect murder, and yet others are more about spectacle and how best to destabilize noble society. Things get even spicier when a little more than halfway we get to meet Sherlock Holmes himself and how he is impacted by William. I haven't read any Sherlock Holmes stories before, but the animated portrayal of the series' chief villain makes for a thrilling series debut. Backed by excellent source material, music, and animation, this is something that has certainly earned a top spot in basically all top lists, but that doesn't mean there aren't others that can claim an even higher spot. Number 3. Premiering in the beginning of the year, Keep Your Hands Up Azoken was a show that I initially skipped over, but boy did I wish I haven't. Keep Your Hands Off Zoken is about 3 girls that make a film club so they can pursue their dreams of creating an anime. This show goes super in depth with all the intricacies that go into making an anime, as well as the history of the process of making it. What really brings the show close to my heart is the absolute passion that went to both its creation and the story, with how the characters got obsessed with their specific studio positions. The show takes its time to show the audience what every step of the animation process looks like and explain the tricks of the trade. This show is special because of how accurate a lot of the information is, especially with regards to film and the different things that have to be considered when making a project. As someone who went to school for post-production audio, the ability for the makers to convey both the wild excitement and brainstorming that the girls have, as well as the shift in focus in getting those ideas onto paper, really stood out to me. Plus, the animation is hyper stylized and details the rough ideas of the girls exquisitely. Combine that with a bop of an OP and ED and you have yourselves a contender for best show of the year. Number 2. But without a doubt, the easiest thing to include in a top anime of 2020 video is none other than The Great Pretender. Boasting incredible cast of characters, classy jazz music, great animation, and bingeable array of heists, this show takes the very best from many others on this list and combines it into something that could only be described as one of the best shows from 2020. It follows an international band of con artists as they dupe smug rich pricks out of everything they own in ridiculously entertaining schemes. The masterful amount of finesse that each character is able to achieve to dupe not just their target, but the audience with how they feel towards a specific decision makes things infinitely more addicting than most everything else on this list. The Great Pretender was the only show from the last year that had me going out of my way to binge watch as many episodes as possible just to know what happens next. Without a doubt, this would have been the best show of the year if it wasn't for the very end. There won't be any spoilers, but let's just say there was a very out of ordinary inclusion in the last heist that just didn't make sense on why it was there, almost ruining the story writing for the entire thing. However, the entire show up until that small point was an absolute banger, so without a second thought, this deserves to be on your watch list. But there's one more show that I think is the best of the year. But before that, let me take a second to go through some honorable mentions. The virus might have delayed many shows and left us with a rather lacking year for animated bangers, but that doesn't mean there weren't notable shows that deserve a second look. Both Fury, I don't like to get hurt, so I maxed out my defense, while having a ridiculously long title, is also home to a ridiculously fun and wholesome isekai about Maple as she accidentally becomes the best gamer in the world. Tower of God also deserves a mention as being the best out of the 3 webtoon adaptations, being both faithful as well as adapting the beloved webtoon series as a shonen series to be reckoned with, at least whenever we get to the 2nd season. And of course, Interspecies Reviewers being the best ecchi of the year, but having it as number 1 would have been just a bit too obvious. Number 1. And now, it is my pleasure to present to you the best anime of 2020. And that show is Sleepy Princess in the Demon Castle, baby! What, you thought would be Jujutsu Kaisen? That hasn't even ended yet. No, it's Sleepy Princess in the motherfucking Demon Castle. You know why? 1. There are no problems. Most shows in this list have something that's holding them back in some way. Akudama Drive is rushed. Doridoro is animated weirdly. Great Pretender tripped on its own dick crossing the finish line. But Sleepy Princess is just about a cute princess kidnapped by Demon Lord as demons and humans war with each other. But with a description like that, this would mean some sort of politically savvy thriller, Zio. No, and that's the second reason it's the best. It's a wholesome comedy. Look, it doesn't have to be said that 2020 was a crap year. Truly, F tier as far as years go. You know what helps with that? Comedy, specifically a cute, wholesome comedy about a princess who tries her best in order to get the best sleeping experience possible. Everything is perfect about this show. The story is about this princess using everything at her disposal to accomplish her sleeping bucket list, including breaking out of prison just to gather materials for a better pillow. The characters are great because it's not just the cute and overly violent princess that lives in this castle, it's all the guards and the top demons that deal with her shenanigans. There are no bad guys in this show, just demons that try their best to play the part and mess with the hero that will maybe come to defeat the demon lord. The music is nothing but bops. The animation is perfect mix of outlandish and adorable. This is just all accumulates to this being one of the best comedy anime period. On the same level, I would dare say, as Kaguya and Nichijou. Watch this show, darn it. So that's my top 10 anime of 2020. If you enjoyed, smash the like button and subscribe for more anime related content. This is my first time diving into content like this, so I'd appreciate it if you left a comment down below of your own top 10 anime of 2020 or shows that you think deserve to be on this list. So until next time, I've been Zeosphere. Stay cultured.